present in our history. We glorify your name. We glorify your name. We remember all you've done. We glorify your name. We glorify your name. We've seen your grace at work in us. We're reminded of your steadfast love. Here we stand, God, we are so thankful. Looking back, we know you've been faithful. We're expectant for the future. We believe the best is yet to come. Presence in our destiny. We glorify your name. We glorify your name. We know you have gone before. We glorify your name. We glorify your name. Spirit, lead us in your path. We want to see revival fire. Here we stand, God, we are so thankful. Looking back, we know you've been faithful. We're expectant for the future. We believe the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. For all he has done, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. For what is to come, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. For all he has done, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. For what is to come, praise the Lord.
Nige, can you put the fans on?
Good one. Yeah. Thank you so much. Wow.
Everybody ready? Everyone nervous? So, Nige, can I see you? What I'll ask Nige to do is to put on the screen, because there'll be an option of 1, 2, or 3 cameras. So if it's on the screen, you can see where it's facing. Thanks, Nige. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, we're going. Yes. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our conversation, really, and debate and panel about the vaccines. It's lovely to have you with us as we get going. Would you like to introduce everyone?
Yeah, sure. We knew that, well, wherever you've been over the last 18 months, it's been a bit of a world-changing, resetting time. And we've been talking about the vaccine, obviously because of the COVID crisis. And we're looking at how the rollout has been, what the implication of that's been, where there are still weaknesses and concerns. There are still hesitancy in different parts of our community, and a good number of different community members have not yet had their vaccine. So this conversation is to try to find out why that's happening, where there are weaknesses, what are the lessons that we can learn, and just how do we take it forward and really take it over the line to finish a good rollout and to make sure that community health is at its very maximum and its very best. Well, we've put together an illustrious panel here, and I'm going to ask them, starting on the very far side, is the Reverend Malcolm Patton from Black Horse Road Baptist Church. Would you all go through the line and give us your name, what you do?
There's an issue.
Oh, there's an issue online? Are we okay?
Yeah, he's going to see. I'm trying to work.
Something happening with the technology.
Yeah.
We're not all on mute, are we?
It doesn't on YouTube. Does it?
Is this live now?
Oh, there you go. We
good?
are live,
We're
yeah.
good to go? Okay, sorry folks, we just thought that there was a bit of a technical hiccup there, so if you wondered what had all happened, we were just making sure all the systems are good to go. Let me introduce to you our panel starting from the Reverend Malcolm Patton.
Okay, so I'm Reverend Malcolm Patton. I'm pastor at Black Horse Road Baptist Church.
Thank you, Malcolm. Good to have you with us this evening.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Bonds, background in social work, and I'm also a local preacher in the Methodist Church.
Thank you, Cynthia. Good to have you with us. Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Martin Edible. I'm a NHS GP working nearby in Newham. I'm also the clinical director of North Newham Primary Care Network and the digital transformation lead for North East London CCG.
Great. Good to have you with us. Next.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Ajoke Israeli Siave, a general practitioner in Bishop Stortford, and I'm also a pastor of Kingdom Culture Movement.
Yeah, good to have you with us. Thank you. My good friend.
Hello, hi. My name is Dr. Kwesi Appiah. I'm a GP in Cheshunt and also a GP with special interest in dermatology. I work across West Essex and Mid Essex and East and North Hertfordshire. And I belong to Bishop Stortford Community Church.
I am technically a doctor, but I'm afraid of psychology, so no use at all if anybody here has any medical problems. But in my other lifetime, I'm Stella Creasy, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Walthamstow, and I care very passionately about our local community, and I'm grateful for everybody who's come this evening to speak on this issue, and also to all the churches for all the work they've done in hosting this.
Wow. Thank you so much. And
Thank you. So my name is Councillor Elizabeth Baptiste. I'm a councillor for Valley Ward in Chingford, and I'm also the Mayor for the London Borough of Walthamforest.
you paused there as if like you were
Yes.
trying to remember. Am I still the mayor?
So I'm the Mayor. I think I wanted to say I'm not a doctor, I'm not a clinician, but I'm here because, like Stella, I'm very passionate, obviously, about our community, and
Yes.
that's why I'm here.
Yes.
Thank you.
We really thank you for your community. We can hold that microphone for the community interest that you represent, and for the technical and expertise that you bring to this panel. So thank you all for that. Just for those who are listening and for us who are in the room, there'll be a kind of 2 or 3 sections to this as we ask questions. We want to ask questions that help us to understand where the political movements are behind all of this. We want to ask questions, especially of the doctors and the medics in the room, because there are a number of people who are going, look, I'm hearing stuff online. Social media's got all kinds of people. Some people are experts, and some people, I don't know who they are, but they just want to be out there, and there's all these kind of conspiracy theories, and it's a confusion. We've come to the conclusion that friends, the real friends to you in a moment like this, are the facts. What's actually going on, how does it work? And it would be great to have the security of medical intervention, medical advice on that. And of course, being an MP and being the mayor, your concerns for the community are absolutely key. We've got Malcolm here representing local church leaders as well. So I think that's a good array of people. It represents well the concerns and the heartbeat of the people listening to the program. So why don't we just jump in with those questions? This is my co-host. Gemma, you didn't introduce yourself.
Sorry, I'm busy typing away. Hi, I'm Gemma. I'm one of the associate pastors here at Elim Leytonstone.
Great, and I'm Pastor Doug Williams from the Emmanuel Community Church International in Walthamstow. So Gemma, let's jump in with these questions and get our panelists working. They're all nervous up here, wondering what on earth we've got them to do tonight, but it's okay, let's talk.
We're not that scary, honest.
Well, Gemma is, but I'm not.
Yeah, I try, I work at it. The youth keep telling me I'm not scary enough. But should we get going with our first question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Ooh, Ooh. So the first question is, what is the current state of play regarding the stats behind the UK vaccinations?
I guess that's you, Stella.
Well, so the good news is that about 2/3 of the adult population in the UK has now had at least one dose, if not 2 doses, of the vaccine. That's good news because if you look at what is happening, although the virus is still very much with us, it means that there are not as many people having as bad an experience of the virus. It's not being transmitted as much, and that's good for everybody, because I cannot stress enough how dangerous this virus is and how many people in our borough alone, we've lost 600 people to this virus over the last year. So it is deadly. So the more people who are vaccinated, the less chance it is transmitted, and also the less chance those people are admitted to hospital with serious illness. Many of you will have seen or had family or friends who might have been admitted to Whipps Cross or wherever who've had a very bad reaction to the virus. The challenge that we're facing, and I want to be very open about this, is that there is a variation between different local communities. Now, I believe there is no such thing as a hard-to-reach group of people. It's about how you reach out to people, how you understand how they want to access services. So the concern that many of us have is that particularly residents from our local black communities are being left behind in the vaccine programme, who have maybe questions or concerns or finding it difficult to access a vaccine. And tonight, and what we're going to do in this week ahead, is about making sure that when we're looking at those figures of all the people getting vaccinated, there is no difference in healthcare, because it really matters that everybody's healthcare is treated. And if this is a vaccine that is good to make sure that you are staying out of hospital, that you can stay safe, then I want to make sure that everybody in our community can access it. And I want to be holding everyone to account for what they're doing to make sure that everybody can access it.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's quite helpful. I mean, in terms of the government's mood, it seems that it's been very positive. They're very happy with the way the rollout's gone, and the things that you've just shared with us would indicate that. But that you said that there are still some areas of concern. Can you just elaborate a little bit more? You know, is this just a hesitancy because of a lack of knowledge, or is there a sort of intentional resistance?
This is for people in the community to come forward and talk about. It's not for me to prejudge. But what I do know is that for some time, over 3,000 local residents from the black community in Walthamstow alone have been waiting to have their vaccine. So not just invited, but actually overdue getting their vaccine, first or second doses. And I believe that matters. It matters if people feel they don't want to come forward, or if they feel they can't access the vaccine. We should talk about it. We should put that healthcare at the priority list, and we should ask ourselves as politicians, as doctors, what more we can do to help close that gap. Because that's in comparison to other local community groups, whether the South Asian community or the white community. But everybody's health should matter in this borough. So if there's a group of people not being served, as a politician, my job is to ask you how we can change that and understand what the barriers are. Because as I say, nobody is hard to reach. Nobody should be written off. Everybody deserves good healthcare that works for them.
Thank you. May, can I bring you in? What are your perspectives on this at the moment?
So, thank you, Stella, for obviously that information. Obviously, I'm speaking, as the mayor of the borough, but also as a black woman.
Yeah.
And I can say that obviously before I came, I made it my business to get the stats for our black or black British residents in Walthamforest.
Okay.
And I can tell you, and this is just recent, that the black British residents of Walthamforest have the lowest uptake of the COVID-19 vaccine of all broad ethnic groups.
Right.
Now, in the younger adults, aged 20 to 39, 35% of black or black British residents have received the first dose,
Right.
compared to the borough average of 52%.
Wow.
Also, there is a large, as Stella mentioned, there's a large variation within the black or black British residents, with 28% of black Caribbean residents vaccinated, compared to 33% of black other residents and 40% of black African residents.
Right.
Similarly, black or black British residents also have the lowest uptake in adults aged 40 plus,
Okay.
with 64% vaccinated compared to the borough average of 73%.
Okay.
And within that, there's also variations within the black ethnicities.
But clearly, within the black community, there's some kind of deficiency in terms of figures. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm here obviously to promote the vaccine.
Yes.
Yeah. Now there's all sorts of rumors, whether it's online or whether it's friends. People talk about the fact that the vaccine has got poke in it. It's going to alter your DNA if you take it. It's got a microchip. You'll be sterilized. Yeah. But as a community, we obviously need to protect ourselves.
Yes.
It would be, in my view, a tragedy if a disproportionate number of black people were to die because of the take-up of the vaccine. The vaccine, in my view, is a way out of the pandemic. This is obviously my view. Now, I am aware that there is a feeling within the black community that we've been hard done by institutions, but I just think we have to just go with trust and the facts. And the vaccine is available. It shouldn't, nobody, the situation that we're in now, nobody should be saying that they can't get access of it, because in my view, it is available. Millions of people have obviously received the vaccine, and I have received it. I've had my second dose, and I'm still here, alive and kicking. But I think what we have to do is obviously build on that trust.
Yep.
Yeah, we are aware that there is inequality, yeah, but we have to build on that trust, and it's for our black people, black community, to ask the questions. If you're unsure, speak to a professional or look on the NHS website and get that information to make that informed decision.
Yeah, that's what we're doing here, and I think everybody really needs to know this forum isn't about trying to leverage compliance. What we're trying to do is to make sure that people are in possession of the facts and can make the most informed decisions about their health that they possibly could. So really, really thank you for that. But in the light of some parts of the community not receiving the level of vaccination that is optimal, what are our next priority steps, really? Stella, what do we need to do? What are you thinking in terms of the government's thoughts and movements as to priorities here?
So I'm incredibly grateful to everybody who's come to speak today, because this has to be a priority. I do not want to hear people writing off communities in our local area and saying, oh, well, there are these difficulties, it's too difficult, because Black lives matter, health matters. And yes, we have seen in other service provision. You might notice, I promise you I haven't been eating lots of pies. I am 8.5 months pregnant.
Congratulations.
But with my other hat on, I know, for example, there are real challenges for black women accessing maternity services and real concerns about those. The start of challenging that is to talk about it. So what we are doing here tonight is to talk about where those challenges are and to say it matters, because your health does matter. And if services aren't reaching people, if they're not answering those questions, if perhaps the way they're being run doesn't work for people, then it is our responsibility to change that, not your responsibility to wait for us to see that. And my worry is that this has gone on for too long. So I'm very grateful to everyone here. I'm very grateful for the commitment of our local healthcare providers, of our local council, but I'm also determined, just as I'm determined that we must make maternity services work for every woman in our local community, that we make our vaccination service work for everybody in our local community. As I say, I am not a proper doctor, as my mother would tell you, like these guys are. I don't have the medical knowledge. We're going to come to those guys in just a moment, yeah. But I have the passion and commitment that Liz and I share, that this community only moves forward together. So we will leave nobody behind in the fight against this virus, and the fight to make sure that everybody can hug their family safe from harm.
Liz and Stella, one more question which with a bit of a political backdrop to it. I've just come back recently from Italy. I was really privileged to conduct a wedding there. But I was shocked when I walked into a restaurant to get a meal with my wife, and the people in the restaurant went, oh, excuse me, where's all your documentation for the vaccination and for your COVID clearance test? And I was like, I've come to get a meal. And they went, well, if you can't produce that, we can't let you in here. You'll have to be outside, or you'll do a takeover or something. It was just the control element. What's the concerns that you're hearing about COVID passports, vaccination passports? A lot of people are saying, yeah, on one level we're talking about health here, but is there a backdrop kind of concern about community control and what access you have in terms of your personal liberties in the community on the back of all of this. Do you want to make a comment on that before I come to the doctors?
Well, I understand that, and I am very concerned about it because I practically think it doesn't really work. As you said, you wanted to get a meal and suddenly you've got to have lots of pieces of paper. That's why, because we haven't necessarily had this conversation before, I want us to have this conversation tonight. I want people to have the knowledge and to have proper, as you say, the facts are your friends.
Yeah.
These guys are the experts. They deal with the vaccine, they deal with the medical background to it, with the science behind it. I believe it is much better for us as a community to consent, and I believe the case is there. And I sit here, as I say, 8.5 months pregnant. I have had both doses of my vaccine, and I wanted both doses to keep my baby safe, because the evidence about what getting COVID if you are pregnant does is very, very frightening, and it's all about stillbirth and really bad outcomes for the baby and the mother. So for me, the evidence base was clear, but I did that on consent, and I want everybody to be able to consent. So I know that those debates are taking place. But actually, if we haven't challenged ourselves to have this conversation and to ask why particular community groups maybe don't feel as connected to the vaccine programme as others do, then we are not doing justice to you. And that has to happen now, and that's what this is about tonight.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Look, we've got our three doctors in the house, and thank you for coming and being a part of this. Could you just tell us, how has life been with the rollout and the impact of that on communities at the coalface where you work? I don't know which one of you wants to jump in, but what are you seeing on the ground? Just tell us what's happening.
Thank you. I'm happy to jump in. First of all, thank you for hosting this event. It's hugely important, as Stella's highlighted, that we speak to all communities, including the black community, to really get that vaccine uptake up. When it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic, the last 90 months have been very difficult for medical practitioners and for healthcare workers across the NHS. My experience in East London has been very tough. The pandemic has had a huge impact on Walthamstow, on places like Newham and Redbridge, and has had a disproportionate impact on ethnic minorities, in particularly the black community. One positive is that we have managed, through the work of science, to get a vaccine, and we have put together a vaccination program in this country, and the vaccine is the way out. The issue now is that there are still people out there who have not had the vaccine yet, and unfortunately, a large number of that do come from the black community. So the important emphasis now is that we work hard to get that vaccine uptake up. Because although we are coming out of the pandemic, we've seen the rules relax, COVID-19 is still here and is still with us. And if you're unvaccinated, the likelihood of not only being sick from COVID, but having a significant debilitating illness and potentially the worst case scenario, death, is still very high. And in order to prevent that, the best tool we have, the best weapon we have, is that vaccine. So that's why I'm so happy that this event is on, and we're trying to spread that message that getting the COVID vaccine is important. Look at the evidence. It's about consent. It's about having the information out there and then making that informed decision. But the only way you can make that decision is by having access to the key information. So thank you for hosting this event, and I'm looking forward to seeing the further comments.
No, thank you for that. That's really helpful to outline those kind of dynamics for us. I mean, at the beginning of this conversation with vaccine and with the COVID stuff, amongst the black community particularly, there was lots of fears and concerns, all that stuff that was being voiced online. The fears that people had about these very ugly side effects from the vaccines, was that warranted, that fear? I mean, I've spoken to a doctor recently who said, to be honest, the vaccines work in different ways and have different strengths and weaknesses according to how they've been manufactured. But a vaccine is better than no vaccine. And so the fears that people had about side effects and negative things happening to them and Bill Gates taking over their minds and controlling the universe. What's the deal? Dr. Jockey or Dr. Kwesi, I don't mind. These fears, how warranted were they?
So, thanks, Mr. Doug. The fears were not warranted at all, because unfortunately, what social media has done for us is that it amplifies always the worst case scenarios than to the majority of the normal, simple flu-like side effects everybody experiences after having a shot, either with a flu vaccine, which most people are used to, in a similar way as having the COVID-19 vaccine. So and obviously, it's not a chip. Your DNA is not transformed into anything. There was no conspiracy about Bill Gates. It's not the Antichrist. It's not the mark of the beast, as some Christians were postulating. And yes, for any novel drug or vaccine, it's gone through rigorous stages before it's actually rolled out into the public. In stage one, in the phase 1 trials of all these vaccines, where they were just animal studies with a few number of just an experimental phase. It went through that phase 1. It went through the phase 2. In fact, the Pfizer vaccine, before it was rolled out in December, when it was approved in the UK, it had over 44,000 patients in its phase 3 trials across various continents, 3 continents, in Brazil, in South Africa, in the US, and also in Europe. And so the clinical science and the evidence of a safety profile was so strong for the Joint Committee for Vaccination and Immunization to approve it for its use in the UK. What will happen with any novel vaccine is there will be an ongoing study and monitoring of side effects, which is normal for any drug or scientific product that comes on the market. That's the phase 4 part of it. It has to be in use. And then whilst it's being in use, then you keep on gathering more data, monitoring it. That's part of it. So, it was not a guinea pig vaccine.
Yes.
It's
which some people felt it was.
Which some people felt was. And it was funny because SARS-CoV-1, we've known about it since 2009, before SARS-CoV-2. So the template of SARS-CoV-2, which is coronavirus, is not new. Yeah. The template for the vaccine manufacturing was never new. So it didn't just take a few months to come up with a vaccine where we knew so much about this virus. And in fact, if you read on certain products, even certain disinfectants, you can still see the name coronavirus in vaccines, disinfectants manufactured 20 years ago. Right. So what was new about coronavirus? It was just this 2019 variant of coronavirus was just a novel one. But the template is not new. Therefore, for the scientific community to come up with a vaccine, they must have known about this virus for a long time. Yes, clearly they have. Just clearly it was there. The knowledge was there. So it was a lot of misinformation, and obviously it was uncalled for, but social media did not help.
So look, Doc, let me get this totally clear. Are you saying that people do not have to have a fear about taking the vaccine?
Absolutely, because the thing is, it's the same as having any medication. There is always a worry about side effects. You go through a side effect profile, but if you think about it, the statistics of everything is a normal distribution. There is always going to be outliers, okay? The majority of the population will be in the normal distribution of the population, and therefore, that is what most of the safetiness is sitting on. There will be 1 or 2 persons as outliers on the other side that might have severe side effects based on either own experience or anecdotally, not necessarily related to the vaccine. But yes, that is also recorded as part of the monitoring of any new vaccine. And yes, rightly so to be worried about. But in the general population, the majority of people will have mild flu-like symptoms, pain, body aches. I had the vaccine, I had a few aches in my arms, and I was fine. I didn't change into anything. My DNA didn't change into anything.
You still look the same to me.
I still look the same.
You still look the same, yeah, you do.
So there are concerns. Obviously, the medical profession will always ask you about, underlying medical problems and other things to take that into consideration. But it's not as alarming and as fearful as, it's been put out there. And there are, as I said, there are outliers in any normal distribution on each side of the spectrum.
Some of the most difficult sort of outcomes or expressions of side effects have been amongst those who are already sort of immune compromised or with underlying background issues. So we're fully aware of all of that. And I think people have been listening, and it may well be that your summary of the fact that we don't have to be fearful of this, that the testing has been as rigorous and as robust as it has been, is quite helpful. And I think a number of people have been tracking with that, and that may well have mitigated against some of the online controversial positions that have been presented to them. However, a concern has emerged because, as you spoke about earlier, there are variants inside this virus. And I think, I don't know, Dr. Jock, if you want to respond, but the issue of the variants, and with the Delta variant being probably one of the most aggressive in terms of its ability to be transmitted and all of that kind of thing, are people right to have a fear that the variants might outstrip our ability to keep pace with that, so that actually the vaccinations we're encouraging now will actually be redundant at some point? Or, with this discussion about booster vaccinations and possibly it being with us like the flu vaccination for life and ongoing, I mean, are these fears without grounds? I mean, I want to know, are we going to keep up with variants?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question. And like my colleagues had said, thank you very much for having me on this panel. I think it's very important that we deal with these things and people are enlightened and educated. I was just going to add on a few things to one of the previous questions that was asked previously, if that's okay, in terms of how things are in our day-to-day clinic lives. I think with the start of the pandemic, there's been a great decline in mental health, with people suffering with anxiety, depression, not being able to see their loved ones and losing loved ones. Yeah. And there's been immense pressure on us as GPs and doctors having to carry that burden. I don't know how your typical clinical day is, but then that's that burden to help people with their mental health. And then there's also people's routine appointments being cancelled and people's healthcare just going on the backlog and waiting lists increasing. And so there has been an increased pressure on us as clinicians and our own mental health as well. So that's one of the things that we've had to deal with. So going to the question that you asked directly in terms of how secure this vaccine is, I think something we need to realize is that with this novel, or supposedly novel, as at 2019, the COVID-19, like Dr. Kwesi had said, the coronavirus is not new, it's just this variant. Things do emerge. So as at now, I think there are about 4 or 5 variants. So there's the alpha, the beta, the gamma, and the one that we're dealing with in the UK is the delta variant. And so as at the time the vaccines were produced, they were made specifically for what we were dealing with at that time. And yes, the viruses have mutated, and that is the way viruses do survive, and they need to mutate to be able to survive vaccinations. But I think from the research is still ongoing, and there has been some form of evidence that if you have been vaccinated, you've had your two doses, there is no reason why the vaccines will not reduce your chances of getting seriously ill if you were to get the COVID-19, be infected with the virus. So I think people should not be so focused on whether the vaccines are going to work for the new variants or the mutant viruses, but we should focus on trying to get ourselves in a position where we are protected from whatever may come our way, because we don't know what's going to happen next. So do what you can do right now. Be here with the present and let tomorrow take care of itself, but do what you need to do right now to get yourself secure and protected.
Thank you. Yeah.
There's a question, just because I've heard it a few times. A lot of people have said, well, if you've had COVID-19 and you've already experienced it and probably now have some immunity to it, what's the deal with getting the vaccine? Because surely having it should give you the immunity. So, and have the antibodies and stuff. So what would your response be? Just because I know for some of the younger people who've had it, it's one of the logical steps is, well, I don't need the vaccine now.
Good question.
Good question. I think what I will say is that, and I'll just answer that question and carry on from where Dr. Ajoke left off. Because when you have the virus, you develop antibodies. But nobody actually knows how long your own antibodies from just exposure to the virus itself is going to sustain you for how long it's going to sustain you for to prevent future infections. Okay, right. So 2 things. Vaccines are made purposely for 2 things: to to prevent infections and to prevent severe disease. Okay? Those are the two reasons why vaccines are made for. And we know that the efficacy of these vaccines were mainly to prevent severe disease, because when Pfizer says that quotes 94% efficacy, it mostly is the 94% of preventing severe disease. Right. And that is why, despite the variants that we have, our hospital admissions are still low, because there is an uptake in the population of this vaccination that is still able to prevent the severe disease, which normally leads to hospitalization. Okay. Some data, just to help and back that, to say in a sense that people who have double vaccinated, in a sense, even though we know that the new variants that Pastor Dag you're talking about, which is the Delta variant, which used to be the Indian variant, it's lower in terms of the efficacy of the vaccines, but it's still good. So the efficacy for Pfizer, it might drop from about the 94% to about 64%, but it's still effective. Okay. It might drop from for the AZT vaccine from about maybe 73% to about 60% for the new variant, but it's still effective. So irrespective of the variants or the vaccine totally, if you think about it, brings and prevents severe disease and death. And the statistics actually shows that it drops the severe death as a result of COVID by 85% from vaccination.
No, helpful to know that the virus and its mutations are not going to be able to outstrip the efficacy of the vaccination. I think a number of people were concerned about that. So, yeah, Gemma.
Well, I'm just asking questions that I've had. Some of them because of a conversation I had. Because one of the things, and especially from young people, is like, well, if we get herd immunity, I'm young. It doesn't matter if I don't have my vaccine because I'm young and I'm likely to recover. So surely herd immunity will do me, getting the vaccine and recovering will be just as good as having the vaccination. I'm coming with questions that young people have asked me because I'm the youth pastor.
Yeah. No, that's a very sort of good question. First of all, it's really important to emphasize that the Delta variant is actually, the evidence shows that if you do get the Delta variant and you've been unvaccinated, the chances of you getting a serious COVID illness is higher compared to the previous strain. And what the evidence is showing that people in their 40s and 30s who have been unvaccinated are experiencing serious and debilitating illness as a result of being affected with COVID-19 and not being vaccinated. So in short, if you're young and unvaccinated, that doesn't mean you have superpowers. It doesn't mean that you're going to get just a mild infection, and you should get vaccinated. It's really important because although things look like they're going back to normal, you can go out for a drink, you can even, pop along to a club and have a dance. COVID is still here, and COVID can still cause serious infections for the young and the old. So it's important to be vaccinated.
Thank you so much for that very robust response.
I'll just answer your question about the herd immunity. So for herd immunity to be achieved in a population, you need at least 80% of the total population, this is adults and children, to be vaccinated.
Our figure's not near that, though.
So we're not there.
Yeah.
So this total population. So if you're looking at waiting for herd immunity, then you're looking for approval of vaccination, including children, before we can achieve that 80%.
Right. So you're saying holding out for herd immunity is not going to be
I think
a
it's just
wise
because you've
strategy.
heard the government talking about herd immunity, and it kind of gives, and also the false sense of security of, well, I'm young. People who are older, this affects. It's not going to affect me because I'm young. And I think it gives you that false sense of security that if I get COVID, well, I'm young enough to recover. But actually, I actually have someone who's the same age as me who had long COVID. So it's that false sense of security you get in your age and your health that I think we have to be very wary of, and being arrogant in that youth in some ways.
Just to add on to what everyone has said, and I think another thing is that sometimes we need to look beyond ourselves, because you're young and you're selfish. It's the nature of humans to be selfish, and all you're thinking about is myself. Well, if I don't get vaccinated, I'm young, I will be okay. What about your grandmother? What about your parents? What about the vulnerable woman in the shop that you're going to? What about the pregnant woman? Are we thinking about other people or just ourselves? And I think when you have that perspective, hopefully that should help readjust the lens through which we see life. I think it's just beyond just me. What about my neighbor?
Hey.
Love my neighbor as myself.
But we're here in the church today, and loving your neighbour is a big issue for us. So I think that's a big concern to hear. I think, actually, though, on the herd immunity issue, I do think at the beginning of the narrative, our government officials were saying that. I mean, I heard bulletins on the TV program that were kind of pushing for the herd immunity issue. And maybe that's given people a false sense of understanding. We're kind of backpedaling a little bit on some of that now, because it's going to take us a while to get to that statistic. But Stella, do you want to respond to that? You may want to defend the political line.
No. When people first started talking about herd immunity, they were talking about hundreds of thousands of people dying.
Yeah.
And that was how we were going to... That is, you say, 600 people and rising, sadly, in our borough alone. That's 600 families who last Christmas had somebody missing.
Yeah.
That's 600 families who might have watched somebody in agony, because this virus can put people on ventilators and agony. Nobody should be... We are, in fact, in the process in Walthamstow of trying to put together a COVID memorial wall. Oh. Now that we have a vaccine, yes, this question of herd immunity is different, but the numbers still don't stack up, and it needs people to have it. So the question that you're asking is, for a day of maybe having a sore arm, can I do my bit to make sure that I don't spread the vaccine? I'd love to hear from the doctors on this, because I've had a number of people who've had COVID more than once, because they've had the different strains. Yes. So the idea that because you've had it once, you are protected, you don't need to have the vaccine. When having this vaccine, it's a very simple, quick thing to do. It means that you are protecting yourself, but you're also protecting other people around you, and you're reducing the chances of every single one of these strains going further within our local community. And every time they go further, it ends up with another family mourning a loved one. So as much as people in Downing Street want to talk about herd immunity or have these highfalutin conversations, I just think of the families here in Walthamforest and the people they've lost, and that's what motivates me.
Well, listen, Stella, I'm going to come to the doctor in a moment, if you will just hold on a second, but I think the point you raised about the impact of this and the fallout amongst families, I mean, on the ground where people are. I'm going to bring in Reverend Patton and Cynthia with your counselling and support mechanisms. How are the people in your congregations or those that you're counselling? What's the feeling on the ground? How is it affecting families? I mean, Stella's just brought this all up, that there are people looking around their lunchtime table and there's an empty seat where somebody they love dearly used to be there, and until this virus hit town, would have been here. So how are people coping with all this?
I think it's had a devastating impact so many families. There's the number of people who've died, but all the people around who are affected, and the people with long COVID and ongoing symptoms. So there's no doubt at the extent of the devastation it's caused. I think, a lot of people have been very responsive and perhaps cautious at first, but I think a lot of what I've seen that has worked well is people are persuaded by those whom they know and those whom they trust.
Right.
Because as been said earlier, there's communities sometimes that lack trust in institutions because of experiences from the past, and still casts a shadow, and that's very real. So I've always, in my congregation, encouraged people to talk about who's been to get the vaccine, how was it, what are we concerned about, and there's that kind of emotional encouragement. I think some people, it's almost like they really don't want to get the vaccine. Yeah. It's like me not going to the dentist, and they'll almost take any reason to hold on to that, and just encouraging them gently, not bullying people as such, but encouraging them, look, this is good for you, it's been said, it's good for the people around you. I think the young people, you know, I remember sitting in a conversation not so long ago with the church leaders. We were talking about this, and I thought, yeah, no, people are taking the vaccine. Then I thought, oh, I've got 2 young people in my household who haven't had the vaccine. And, you know, why are they not having the vaccine? Well, some of it is the feeling that things are going back to normal. And so the urgency of it is draining away.
Right.
And reminding people that, just look at Australia, just look at, you know, it is important to keep up the pace and not think that it's becoming history. And I think we have to keep gently reminding people that this is still important, as we've been saying tonight. Some of it is they live busy lives, and it's the getting around to it. And just pinning people down. And it's lovely that we've got these opportunities coming up this week, and we've seen more opportunities in different places. That, you know, there's a time for everybody, if you like, when to fit your busy schedule to go and get it. You know, those things are important. Yes, social media, young people watch a lot of social media. I remember being in a conversation with somebody about the magnetic arm, and we took the magnets off the fridge and said, go on, try it, have the vaccine. And, you know, not trying to mock people, but just accept that, you know, listen to the facts, but also listen to people you know and trust, and, you know, members of your family, and just keep gently encouraging people. This is important, this is good. And I think from a congregation point of view, one of the things that I like to remind people is that we're very blessed, we're very fortunate here in this country. There are so many people across the world who would love to have a vaccine, and they're not being offered it, and they're a long way off being offered it. We are in one of the most wealthy, well-endowed with our NHS countries in the world, up there in the top 4, 5, 6 countries in the world. You can't squander that. That is a disrespect to all the people in countries, developing countries. And I just like to think, you know, let's be thankful. And thankful for the NHS and all those, the scientists, research. Give thanks to God for them. And yes, get our vaccines. And yes, help to encourage, make sure that people around the world get the opportunity to get vaccines as soon as possible, because that's really important too. It's really important that the vaccines get rolled out into countries around the world.
Cynthia, anything you'd like to say on this?
Yes, I would like to add one of my most inspiring examples of taking the vaccine is a lovely lady I know who will be 100 on Saturday. And a couple of months ago, when she had the call from her GP to come in and have the vaccine, her daughter panicked and called me. In my capacity as a social worker, she called me and she said, I don't know what to do. I'm really fearful. My mom is almost 100. And I said to her, have a conversation with your mom and get her views before you start advising. And immediately, her mom said, of course I'm going to have the vaccine. I love life, and I want to live it to the fullest.
Come on.
And she had no hesitation, and I thought, what a fine example. I'm looking forward to celebrating her 100th birthday next Saturday. And I think for me, it's a collective responsibility. And I'm speaking as someone from a black community who knows that the black community lives in a household that has multiple family members, who has a particular way of caring for each other, supporting each other. We like our hugs, we like mingling. And before COVID, this is what was happening in the households. And so COVID brought on a change that no one really expected. And I think we're still trying to come to grips with what has happened. Added to that, there is suspicion and there's fear. And I'm so pleased that so many churches now have opened the conversation, although I must say that some of the feedback from church members initially was, are you going to force us to have it? No, but that conversation, because people have so much confidence in organizations like the church, even more than they perhaps, and my apologies to the GPs and our MP and mayor, but they have a certain amount of confidence in the church. And I think it's very important that these conversations do not stop, because I have experienced what it is to suffer from the effects of COVID. I was extremely ill, and I felt I was dying. As a matter of fact, I knew I was dying. And I felt, because I had, well, the experience I had with COVID would take the rest of the evening for me to discuss. Struggling to breathe, can't breathe, losing my senses, the anxiety, no family around to support me, what's going to happen. But I'm grateful that my faith worked hand in hand with the medical profession. And I think this is something we need to get out to our members. Yes, we prayed when we heard that scientists are going to be developing a vaccine. Churches were praying that, you know, God will guide that process. And now that we have the vaccine and all the suspicion around the vaccine, we have to ask ourselves the question, well, we prayed for help, didn't we? Yeah. We prayed for help. It's not for us still, as people of faith, to dictate how that help comes. And I really feel that faith and science is working well together, and we've got to hold on to that. Before I finish, one of the things that came to me when I went to have, because I'm double vaxxed, and if I have to be triple vaxxed, that's fine. That came to me when I went to my local center to have my vaccination. I thought how good it would have been if there was a desk with some advisor sitting there willing to speak to people who were hesitant. And I have checked and rechecked, and I still don't see that desk there. We need to talk more to our people and try as best we can not to let them feel that they're wicked or ignorant people because they don't want to have a vaccine, but to let them know, I understand, but let's have conversation. Wow. More and more conversations need to be opened.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to just follow up on that. So I'm going to get a little bit personal. My mother is 83, and initially she was very reluctant. So I'm going to bring my Caribbean accent now. She says, I'm not taking that thing, girl, me. Anyway, she has had her second jab, and she now says, Elizabeth, I feel so young, and she's dancing, yeah? And then the other personal experience, my daughter, who's 28, never said to me, well, Mum, I'm not going to take it, but guess what? She got COVID. And I was a little bit upset with her because I just thought, you're not taking this seriously. And it scared me because when she was younger, she had asthma. And because of the COVID, the asthma came back. And imagine having to dial 111 and getting advice on the phone as to what to do. Yeah, to quickly run to the chemist to get an inhaler. If not, maybe my daughter wouldn't be here today. Wow. Yeah, so this is just a personal experience. So as a result of that, we've all been in my household, had our second jab. And like you, my sister, I'm looking forward to my third jab. Yep. Okay, the booster, here we go. Yep. But I want to come back to Reverend Patton, if I may. You mentioned that, thank God for the vaccination and all of those kind of things. And
we're grateful that we've prayed, as Cynthia mentioned. But can you answer me, sir, the theological grounds that some people have raised for not taking the vaccination, is there any real validity in this? Is there, in your community, faith community, any sort of theological reasons why people shouldn't take this vaccination?
No, there's absolutely no theological reasons for not taking the vaccine. You know, there are many reasons why people might be cautious and this and that and the other, and that's what we're talking about, isn't it? But if you look at biblical theological grounds, you know, we rely on medical science. We applaud medical science. We depend upon it. From the moment we're born to, well, even before we're born, right through to, you know, the end of life. We are guided, we are helped, we are facilitated by medical science, whether it's my blood pressure tablets, whether it's paracetamols, or, you know, in so many aspects of life. And I think, you know, it's the shift, isn't it, from thinking that vaccines is some kind of government conspiracy or some kind of thing, when actually, as we've been saying, that the vaccine is a gift to us from God, is a gift to us from the scientists, the medical science, and all the work that is being done. Okay. Not just suddenly when a pandemic appears, but week in, week out, day in, day out, with regard to so many illnesses and diseases. And so, no, you know, God gives these skills, God gives these insights, God gives the materials with which we can work with in order to create these vaccines.
Thank you.
And so speaking as a pastor, I would want to encourage people to, you know, be grateful and thankful for the way that our medical community care for us.
Thank you, Pastor Malcolm. I think the collective sentiment of this panel is that the vaccination process is safe and sound, and as far as we can see, our best strategy at present for dealing with this virus and its implications, and I think that's helpful. It may well be that those who are listening would like to know kind of practically what would happen now. Maybe they've been sitting here, you know, thinking, I'm not sure whether I should or should I not. The title for today is Take It or Take It Not, we're not sure. And maybe some people have decided that yes, it's time that I step up and do this properly. Gemma, where are people going? You've got some questions on that?
Oh, we've got some questions coming
Okay,
through.
well, go ahead.
So we have a question. I'm going to read it because it's two parts. I'll let you decide who answers it. The media consensus says getting the vaccine is fine, leaving COVID speculative citizens feeling like an outcast. Do you believe the way the government/authority figures are painting this picture is the most inclusive strategy?
Wow.
I know people who are maybe hesitant are being made to feel a little bit like outcasts and like they're doing something wrong.
Who's going to respond? Gemma, do you want to do it? Jump in?
No, that's Gemma.
I'm sorry, Stella. I'm getting confused. I've got so many names to remember.
No, I said at the start, I get very angry when people talk to me about people being hard to reach, because it feels to me like that's a cop-out. That's a cop-out for us as politicians, it's a cop-out for us as organisers. Nobody is hard to reach. You have to ask yourself whether you are answering their questions, whether you are giving people the information they want. And if we're not, then it's on us to find a way through that. And that's what tonight is about. That's what these guys are here to do. So, you know, okay, yes, sometimes there are, I mean, I love the idea that Bill Gates has thought this through for so long that he wanted to put people in chips in people. But you know what? If that's what people are concerned about, as you say, you show them that they're not magnetic. You actually take time to talk to people. Most of the people who have been sceptical of me, I give you an example from my own work I've done on pregnant women and the vaccine. We were given conflicting information. I was given a leaflet in April telling me that as a pregnant woman I couldn't have the vaccine until I'd finished breastfeeding. Then the science changed, then the evidence changed. The responsibility then was on the healthcare providers and on politicians like me to make sure that that evidence was given to women, not to say, find it out for yourself and then get cross with women who hadn't. And I believe absolutely passionately we should be having these conversations, but we should do them from a position of respect. And for me, I respect that people want information. Yes. I respect that people have questions. What I want to make sure that I'm doing with the power that I have as a member of Parliament is making sure that conversation is happening. And I want to say so clearly why tonight matters to me is because I don't believe that conversation has been happening. And so people watching on YouTube have a right to ask those questions.
They do.
What they also have is a brilliant panel of people who can give them answers. And that's the best thing of all. That's where consent comes from. And that's why consent matters, because you treat people with the respect to understand they have concerns.
They're definitely coming through now, some questions.
Let's go.
They're literally coming through. So the next question is, how can people who are sceptical about the vaccine be reassured that there will not be any dangerous side effects in the coming years?
So I think one thing I want to add is that I think we should take, as human beings, we should take responsibility for what we feed ourselves. So you don't just walk on the street and see, well, some people do, but you don't just walk on the street, see a random sandwich with mold and stuff your face with it. And, see a bottle of whatever and gulp it down. But we do the very same thing with information. Every single piece of information, or you use the word trash, that comes our way, either through social media, text messages, emails, everything that comes our way, we gobble it down without, going out there to do our own research. And I agree with what you said in terms of us as politicians. Yeah. I'm not a politician, and healthcare professionals giving out this information, but we also should take responsibility for what we feed ourselves with. Where are you getting your sources of information? Is it from a WhatsApp message? Is it from conspiracy websites that have been specific? Is it from YouTube pages that have got loads of likes and are just out there just to create lots of scary messages? So yes, there's loads of places you can get information from. You have the NHS website, you've got your GPs, you have got the NHS you can ring 119, you can go on the NHS, you can go on the WHO website, and there are trusted websites you can go to for information. Not WhatsApp, not emails, and not social media or random YouTube pages that have no basis.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
So I want to do 2 quick questions, and then I think it's time. Do you believe that in the future we'll be forced to take the vaccine? And the second question is the vaccine still in the clinical trial stages?
Do you know? Okay. Just a quick one. So I think you did first. One of the first question was about the future side effects. And it might go to your question about, is the vaccine still in the clinical trial stages? Which is what I said to you, that every clinical trial stages have various phases. So phase 1 is animal studies, phase 2 is a big population, phase 3 is big, random control trials, big populations, over 40,000, which is what, after that phase 3 trials, that these vaccines were approved based on the data for these phase 3 trials. Phase 4, part of every medication, every vaccine is an ongoing accumulation of data. So it's not that you are in a clinical trial stage, it's an ongoing accumulation of data. If you have any medication, if anyone who takes any medication, in the British National Formula, BNF formula, there is a yellow card in it. And every 6 months, this medication booklet formulary is updated, because there are side effects that people keep developing over the years. So take simple paracetamol. The side effects you see on the profile of paracetamol did not accumulate over 6 months. It's over years of recording and data gathering. So it's not we are not in a clinical trial with the vaccine, but we're still accumulating more data about this vaccine. Yeah. And that's why Stella said in March, we didn't have much data about pregnant women and vaccine. By this time, we've got enough data to back it up. So it's not trials. We're still in the phases.
So the phase that we're in is a recognized and affirmed medical process for assessment.
Absolutely.
Nothing unusual.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what was the other question?
Yeah, I was just going to go to the other question that was asked, which was an interesting one about whether in the future there would be any scenario where individuals or the general public would be compelled.
Yes.
In the UK, we have laws which we follow, and a general principle of respecting individual autonomy. That means your individual right to make decisions based on information put in front of you. Autonomy can only rarely be overridden in very specific circumstances, if there is a threat and based on your decision to others, there's only really specific scenarios where that would sort of occur. You would never really be forced as such, but if you're working in a care home or you're a medical professional, you know, we are guided that we should get the vaccine, and if we choose as healthcare professionals not to, there is, you know, a situation where we would have to cede our professional responsibility because we may be putting others at risk. But as individuals, the scenario where you would be forced to have a vaccine is very unlikely to come about because we just don't have that sort of system in the UK. Having said that, it's really important we don't lose sight of what, as a nation, we've experienced over the last year and a half. We've over 130,000 people who have died as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the huge debilitating long-term effects of COVID, the impact it's had on our economy. The vaccine is our route out of here. And it's really important that, you know, you look at information, you speak to your GPs, you make an informed decision, but the vaccine is our way out of this pandemic. And I think it's so important that events like this is happening because, as Stella said, no group is hard to reach. It's about going out to people, giving them the information, and supporting them in making the right decision. And thank you so much for hosting this.
Okay.
There's a lot more questions coming through, which always happens in these things. We get more questions at the end. But I'm just going to ask one more, just because it should be quite a simple question, is, will we need the vaccine every year like we do the flu?
Right.
So we don't know is a short answer, but it's likely because, as you know, or may not know, that every year the flu vaccine is different. So the flu vaccine you had in 2020 is different from the flu vaccine that we're going to be having from September going. So in the same sense, because of variants and the virus is mutating, so we cannot rely on the same vaccine that was produced from the wild variants, which is the first original COVID-19, which was used in manufacturing the first consignment of vaccines which came out. And that's why we are experiencing with a slight fall in efficacy with Delta currently. So it's likely that we might still have to get some boosters in the same way that you still have a flu vaccine every year.
Based on the dynamic of variants.
Based on the dynamics of the variants
mutation.
and the mutations. Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we can't answer all the questions.
Wow.
But I might see if one of these doctors are nice at the end and see if they'll answer 2 or 3 of the questions in the comments. Go for it. I'm getting told by well, I think we've answered a few of them, which is about natural immunity and the fact whether we've discussed natural, but I think we talked about herd immunity, which I think is the same thing. So if you weren't here for the beginning, some of these questions were answered earlier on in our conversation. But the final question, I'll make this the final question, is why are unvaccinated people being made to feel selfish about the vaccine when both unvaccinated and vaccinated can transmit the virus? So I thought maybe one of you could talk about, because I think it's important to talk about the transmission.
Dr. Jockey.
So I think that's a very valid question, and I understand well, I don't understand fully, but I can empathize with where the person is coming from. So I think with those who have been vaccinated, they feel, I believe they feel there's a sense of responsibility that they have to their community and their world at large. And so for those who feel that they're getting vaccinated to help those around them and to help reduce death rates and reduce the transmission, I think for them it's very difficult for them to compute why somebody would not want to do the same thing to help reduce the spread and reduce the death rates. Now, in terms of why are people being made to feel like, you know, they're selfish, I know I used the word selfish at the very beginning, and I do apologize if that did offend anyone. I sincerely do apologize. I think with regards to that, Like I think someone had mentioned it earlier on about getting educated and just reading and researching for yourself. What is the reason? Why don't you? What are you scared of? What are you afraid of? Because the chance of you getting the COVID vaccine, the COVID-19 virus, you cannot know if you're going to get this infection. But there is something that you can guarantee. You can guarantee yourself getting some level of protection by getting the vaccine. At least you can guarantee something by a little percent. So I think in terms of people feeling that they're being made selfish, I think it's the general consensus that we are saying we're trying to work together as a whole to help prevent deaths. That's my opinion on this.
Thank you.
Gemma, can I just to add up to what Dr. Ajoke said, it's obviously about the transmission bit of it. Is I first of all mentioned that the reason why we made vaccines were two reasons: to prevent infection and to prevent severe disease. And that's really important. So the virus is not gone. The virus is still with us. What we have so much demonstrated with a lot of data and a lot of evidence is that this vaccination has prevented severe disease and hospitalization. Despite the virus still being, in terms of recorded infections cases, hospital admissions are low. So that is very clear with us. The issue with transmission is still that we still know that the vaccine reduces at the level of transmission. It might take us a longer time to understand that with effect, but the main aim that we have achieved with this vaccination is preventing severe disease and death, and you can know by the statistics that is around.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I just add something? I just want to, I'm speaking obviously to the whole of the community. I would just urge, if you can, just to perhaps just trust the science. And I know it's hard, but trust the science. Nobody's forcing you, obviously, but you have to make an informed decision. And I would just ask that you talk to your doctors or you visit the NHS website and listen and make that informed decision. Because wherever you are, I just want to put out there, let's do this together. Because we need to avoid a disproportionate death in the Black community. Thank you.
I just think that's also one of the, obviously we've talked a lot about the vaccine tonight, but not necessarily the virus. And that is ultimately what we're trying to fight here, and ultimately what we're really frightened of. And I look at the figures, particularly, I think it was Martin who said that actually from the Black community there's a much higher level of mortality for getting the virus in of itself. So I understand, nobody likes injections, like you say, nobody likes really going to the dentist, but you put it against what having rotten teeth might mean for you. And I think it's really important in this context not to see the vaccine just in of itself, but also one of the reasons why I think people get quite frustrated and maybe they don't have the best conversations with people who maybe are hesitant is because they're frightened for what would happen to that person if they got the virus. And we should talk about the virus itself as well as the vaccine. This is not just would you go and have an injection? This is a fight. As I say, we've seen families lose family members. Some of the hardest conversations I've had have been with people who got COVID, and then because they had somebody in their family who was extremely clinically vulnerable, that person got COVID. And watching somebody they loved suffer because they and they didn't have a particularly bad reaction to COVID, but their family member did, and the guilt that they felt. So within this discussion, we must never forget that ultimately what all of us are fighting is not for a vaccine, but against a terrible, terrible virus that can cause real harm to people.
Yeah, thank you.
So just as a response to the discussion tonight, there's some pop-up clinics that have been arranged this week, and the data should come on the screen so that you can go and get your vaccine. And if you're still hesitant or have concerns, please do speak to your GP, go on trusted websites, speak to your pastors. We've had some amazing conversations with people, but you'll see them on your screen with some pop-ups that are happening over this next week that you are able to go. You can book a space and go and get your vaccine, and we're doing it for the greater good. We're doing it to look after our neighbour, protect our neighbour. So please do book in, go get a vaccine.
I've got the list here, and I will force everybody on this panel. That's the compulsion. I will make you all retweet the picture of the details of it and share it. Tomorrow, Monday the 16th of August, there will be one at Emmanuel Church in Walthamstow on Erskine Road from 4 o'clock till 8 o'clock in the evening, because I know some people have said it is difficult to get back in time sometimes for appointments, so that's great. They're going to be there till 8. On Tuesday, Malcolm's Church, the Black Horse Road Baptist Church is hosting one from 3 p.m. till 7 p.m. On Thursday, the 19th of August, at Leighton Cricket Ground from between 3 p.m. till 7 p.m. And on Friday here at Ilham Church from 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. Now, you need to book in just because they need to make sure they've got the right number of vaccines. I mean, wouldn't it be terrible if you made the effort to come down and they didn't have any left? If you want to book for a vaccine, all you have to do is call 0208 496 3000, choose option 5 and then option 1, and ask to be booked into one of the Unity service clinics. But we will also put that information on as much social media. So that is the social media you can trust, is the circulation of the details of this. Because what's brilliant tonight is all these churches wonderfully stepping up to share their facilities to be able to make sure that we can have that. There are lots of spaces at these vaccine clinics, so hopefully it would be brilliant if we could fill them, but they start tomorrow at those different directions.
Please do get your vaccination. We want to return to normal as much as possible, but we also want to protect those who are most vulnerable in our community and society. So if you're young, I actually have had both my vaccines.
Me too.
Because of working in the food bank and coming across extremely vulnerable people. And I did it not for myself, but for the people that I come into contact with who are vulnerable and need protecting. So I'm going to pass over to Doug to pray as we finish.
It's been great. I want to say thank you to this panel. Those of you who are watching the live stream obviously joined with me to say it's been incredibly helpful to have your perspectives, your expertise, background knowledge. And I just hope that that's helped allay fears and will maximize people's health and well-being across our borough and beyond. So thank you for the time you've invested by being here this evening. Really, really grateful for your making that investment. And thank you those who are on the live stream, those the people in the building here, thank you for coming and being a part of all of this. Really, really helpful. And we just trust that an event like this is going to prove, supportive to everybody, getting whatever help they need to maximize their health. And as a minister, like we normally do at the end of our service, I like to pray. So if you join me with every eye closed, every head bowed, and I'm just going to thank God for his help in all of this. Father, we thank you this evening for the wonderful opportunity we've had to sit here in this conversation and just to talk through these issues. We can see very clearly it's complicated, it's multi-layered, it's not straightforward, but people are doing their very best to make sure that help is given to those who most need it during this crisis period where we're fighting this virus and wanting to make sure that we leave nobody without the help and the support that they need to stay healthy, strong, and live full, vital lives. So thank you for blessing us and helping us this evening. May your grace and kindness continue to bless the folks that we serve and love dearly. We ask all of these things in and through the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Please do share this. Click the button at the end. Share this with anybody you know that has concerns so that they can have the most informed consent for the clinics this week.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye, everybody. God bless you. Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
That TV thing where you talk.